This is my itch.io page. It shows all the jam games I've made, and you can see that I've made about 8 of them over the span of about a year. Now, I'm the kind of guy that likes to reminisce, and a lot of these games are made in completely different genres with completely different themes, so I thought it would be fun to see what I learned from each of them and how we can apply them to future games. Of course, as you can see in my last video, some are definitely better than others, so I learned from successes and from failures, so let's just see what all I learned. Starting with The Switcher. Now this was my first jam game, so obviously I learned a lot of practical stuff about coding and raycast and art and all that. But I also learned about puzzle level design, and specifically that it's a good idea to draw your levels out before you put them in the game, just so you can kind of visualize the flow. I had a lot of game mechanics to work with, and being able to kind of piece them together before I plot them into the game helped immensely. Next was Blowhole. This was an arcade type game, sort of a shooter, except you shoot water at birds who are trying to get to all the fish. Now this game may be small, but it does have a lot of juice, a lot of particle effects and screen shake, and that's mostly what I learned from this jam was, juice never hurts. And after that comes something in a similar vein, Color Roll-Lock. More of a strategy-oriented shooter, and it was probably honestly my worst game. I pretty much forgot every lesson that I previously learned, and the only thing I can really say positively about this one is that I learned what not to do. At least it has a pretty cool adaptive soundtrack. I mean, that's kind of cool at least. Next is Wordless. That was definitely my most complex game yet, and coming right after my tiniest and worst game yet, it was honestly received pretty well. The only problem was that the map was way too big, so I mostly learned that it's okay to not have a giant content-full experience if you're making a story-based game. After Wordless came Breezy, which was definitely a very good game, except it only had one giant flaw that kind of ruined the experience. And that flaw was the controls. They were not responsive or sensitive enough because I had accidentally put them in fixed update instead of update. And that's a common Unity issue for beginners, but I had fixed that issue before, so I don't know why I didn't realize that. Anyway, beyond the making excuses, I learned that if you have bad controls, it can definitely ruin the whole experience, so I made sure that all my other games controlled well. After that was INNSANE, my game that was supposed to be a knockoff of Hotel Mario, but actually kind of ended up being better. It was also my first sort of win in a game jam. I mean, there are only 6 people, and I tied for first, but you know, it's pretty much a win. The main thing I learned from this game is that you don't really need a twist to have a good game. The rest of my games so far have been sort of combinations of genres, like a typing RPG for Wordless or a puzzle sports game for Breezy, but this was just pretty much a pure platformer. Next was Super Looper, and I probably took the lessons I learned with Wordless a bit too far. This game had a pretty fun premise, but it was extremely short. For comparison, The Switcher, my first jam game, had 10 levels when I released it, and I added 10 more levels in a level editor after launch. The Super Looper had about 5 levels, and I never added any more. So I learned not to make a game too short, even if it's just a 2-day jam. Always leave time for level design. And finally there's my latest jam game, Bleak Friday. I would consider it my best game, and it's definitely pretty good, if a bit unbalanced with the baseball bat item clearly being the most OP. But what I learned from that one was to keep pushing limits. With Super Looper and INNSANE and a few of my more recent jam games, I had kinda not pushed the limits very much. I just made games that I knew I could finish. Obviously you don't want to overscope too much when making a jam game, but I had to remind myself that pushing your limits and maybe scoping it a little bit more than you can handle is okay, because you can see what you're capable of. So that's pretty much everything I learned from my jam games, and hopefully I can make another one of these videos in the future with a much longer list. I definitely want to keep making jam games because they're fun little experiences and they always help me to learn new things. But that's all I have to say about it. Remember to buy my game Wing It, and have a good day. See ya.